Hello BookTube, Sarah here, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my weekly reviews for November 17th to the 23rd. I finished 5 books this week and I did have 1 DNF, so I will talk about that when I get to it. So yeah, it was a pretty good reading week. Nothing was absolutely spectacular, but all the books were pretty much average or just a little above average, so they were enjoyable, of course, except for the DNF. If you want to jump ahead in the video to any of the specific reviews that I am going to do, there is timestamps in the description box below. Please do feel free to go ahead and jump ahead if you want to. Today's video is being brought to you by $1 coffee from McDonald's. Garrett and I went to Walmart this morning to do our grocery shopping like we do every Sunday, and I went to McDonald's and realized that, oh no, breakfast isn't being served. Most of our McDonald's do the 24-hour breakfast, like you can get it anytime during the day, but the ones in the Walmart, because they're smaller, they don't do that. But they had like all these coffee things like ready to go. I'm like, why is there so much like coffee being served? I'm like, oh, it's on for $1. So I got an extra large because I figured that'll last me all day long. But anyway, yes, so it's being brought to you today by coffee, so I am nicely caffeinated. And can I just mention, I don't know if the States is the same, but the holiday cups from McDonald's are adorable this year, and I absolutely love them. So there's a polar bear, a reindeer, a fox, and I think an owl. So there's 4 different ones, and a part of me really wishes that, and I don't know if they do because I haven't been inside an actual McDonald's, but whether or not they would sell these as like ceramic mugs would be totally adorable. I would so buy the entire collection, but I just absolutely love them. I love how whimsical and how they're holiday, but they're not in your face Christmassy. But yeah, I really, really like them. So anyway, sorry, total side note. On to the books that I finished this week, you guys. So the first one that I finished was My One and Only Duke by Grace Burrowes. This is a historical romance novel. It was narrated on audio by James Langdon. This is the first book in the Rogues to Riches series. This was first published in 2018. Average rating on Goodreads of 3.97 stars. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This one was for Romanceopoly. This was for the dungeon category, which was to read a book about a person who had spent time in jail or, you know, an ex-con or something like that. So this is the story of Jane and Quinn. And Quinn is our male lead, and he, at the beginning of the book, is in Newgate Prison in London, or outside London. He is there actually on death row, if you want to call it that. He is set to be hung and for murdering another person. So at the beginning of the book, like I said, he's in prison and he meets Jane. And Jane is the daughter of a local clergyman. And this clergyman is not exactly on the up and up religiously. He is kind of looking after his best interests, and he's, his faith is there, but it's a little misguided, if you will. And her mother passed away a few years earlier because she used to accompany her husband to the prison. And she got sick. The mother got very sick and died, some sort of a fever. So Jane is motherless, but she is older. I don't know whether or not she's in, well, she was married before. You kind of find all this out at the beginning of the book, so I'm really not giving too much away. She was married briefly against her father's wishes, and she got pregnant, and then her husband was killed in a barroom brawl of some kind. Like, he said something that he shouldn't have said to the wrong person, essentially. So she is pregnant and she meets Quinn. She kind of goes into his cell because she's trying to get away from somebody else. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what happened at the beginning. But anyway, they end up meeting. And she keeps coming back to visit him. And at the beginning of the book is a Monday, and he was supposed to be executed that Monday, but then the hangman got sick with the fever. And so they had to hold it off till the following Monday. And so over the course of that week, she visits him more and more, and then he kind of finds out her circumstances and how she really doesn't have anything, and how her father, like I said, very misguided in his beliefs, is all about giving back to those less fortunate, which is very admirable, but is literally selling off every single thing that they have. They can't pay rent, they can't, because he doesn't work, the father does everything charitable. So they can't pay for coal, so Quinn offers to marry her, knowing full well he's about to die, and essentially leaving her part of his fortune. So around this time, they also find out that Quinn is the heir to a dukedom. Some 8th cousin couple times removed, through the family tree. They've kind of been looking for an heir to this dukedom for many, many years, and they found him. So needless to say, he is saved from the hangman's noose. And then the two of them are now actually married. She thought she was going to be a widow again, and now they have to learn to be married to each other, and him being a duke, and finding out who set him up to take the fall for murdering this person, because yes, he didn't actually murder the person. So there's kind of a lot going on. I did enjoy it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I just found the relationship between Quinn and Jane to be less than great. I liked the overall story behind it. I love the premise of it. I thought it was really, really interesting with him being in prison and, trying to find out who set him up, along with, this whole finding out that he's a duke and how he handles that aspect of it. But beyond that, the actual romance or relationship between the two of them it was lacking. I don't know what else to say other than that I felt it was lacking. And it wasn't absolutely spectacular. And that's what took it down a star rating for me, because if the relationship between the two of them had been better, this could have absolutely gotten a 4.5 star rating from me. But I do enjoy Grace Burrowes' writing, and I do plan on reading more of this series. Like I said, it wasn't unenjoyable. It was very enjoyable. And I think I borrowed this one on audio from my library, so it was available through Overdrive, which was great. But yeah, I mean, it was enjoyable. If you like historical romance, definitely give it a try, because it's a little bit different from the norm. The next book that I finished was The Rebel by Joanne Rock. This was, of course, a contemporary romance novel. Book number 1 in the Dynasty's Mensa Falls series. Harlequin Desire novel number 2697. Sorry, I'm trying to read this without my glasses, you guys. The older I get, the harder it is to make the print bigger. Published originally in 2019, this book just came out in November. Goodreads average rating of 4.25 stars. I gave this one 3.5 stars for my Triple RC challenge, my Romance Readers Reading Group challenge on Goodreads. This was for challenge number 5, which was Sandwich Day, which was to read a shorter book. And this book comes in right around 200, little over 200 pages. And special thanks, of course, to NetGalley and Harlequin for sending me an e-art copy of this book to review for you guys. So, the Dynasty series within the Harlequin Desire line has been around for a long, long time. It is several mini-series within the Desire line, and they usually follow one family. I really do enjoy them. These are usually very wealthy, very well-to-do families, very aristocratic families, and they'll follow like brothers and sisters, and each story will follow a different member of the family, essentially. So this is the newest one, Mensa Falls. Usually the Dynasty series are named after, given the family name. For example, the author's last name is Rock, so it'd be Dynasty's The Rocks or something like that, just for an example. I just use the author's last name just as a placeholder, essentially, because I can't remember what some of the other ones were named. But this one factors in around a certain location, so I know this book and I know the next book because I looked when I was doing my Harlequin Anticipated Reads list for December. I did see that the second book is coming out in December, and it follows the brother from the main character in this story. So I don't know after that if there's other siblings or cousins that are going to come out of the woodwork, or whether or not they're going to follow other people in this town. I don't know. So Mensa Falls is this, it's a resort in this town in, I think it's Montana. And our main characters in this story are Lily and Marcus. And Lily and Marcus work for the same company. It is Marcus's family company, and he is trying to buy the company from his half-brother. They share the same father, but have different mothers. And Lily works for Devon, which is Marcus's brother. And they work on separate coasts from each other. Marcus works in LA, and Lily works in New York. And they have met before, of course, at company things and what have you, but they don't work day to day with each other. She is his brother's executive assistant of some kind. So the brother is somewhere in the Middle East, and he's dealing with some business type things, and he kind of gets stuck there at the very beginning of the book when he loses his passport, or it's stolen, or his passport and wallet are stolen or something like that. So he's kind of having to go through a lot of red tape and trying to get back to the US. So he sends Lily to Mensa Falls to help deal with his brother with these negotiations. So along with all that's going on, there's also, of course, the romance between Lily and Marcus. You know, it's a bit of a slow burn, which I really did enjoy. And I really like the two of them as characters. I really like Lily. She was engaged at the very beginning of the book, and you know right away that this is not, like, they barely see each other. It's more of a marriage. It was going to be a marriage of convenience to kind of align the two families because they're both, I guess, some sort of a banking empire. And so there's kind of a lot going on, a lot to unpack in this book, but it was really, really enjoyable. It gets very spicy. And then along with all that's going on, there's also this secret involving Marcus and Devon's father, something that he never told them about. And then there's this other character that you're going to meet in the next book, because I did read the back of the next book to see, and I'm like, okay, she makes an appearance, something to do with her family and his father, or their father. So again, a lot to unpack, but really, really enjoyable. Joanne Rock does not disappoint with books. You know, I what did I say? I gave it 3.5 stars, more than an average rating for me. It was really enjoyable. You know, these books really need to wow me to get like that 4.5 star rating. And, you know, this one was pretty standard for the Desire line. Absolutely enjoyable. Great characters, great location. There's some great secondary characters, and I'm very, very interested to see, as the series progresses, what other characters are going to come in. You know, maybe I'll find something out in book number 2, which I do plan on reading, not in December, but maybe in January. Would be a lot of fun. So yeah, we shall see. But I absolutely do recommend it. The next one that I finished was Soldiers' Christmas Secrets by Laura Scott. This is an inspirational romantic suspense, so this is a Christian fiction or a faith-based romantic suspense novel. Book number 1 in the Justice Seeker series, love-inspired suspense novel number 784. This was also published in 2019. It came out in November. Average rating on Goodreads of 4.26 stars. I gave this one 3 stars. I didn't love this one. It had a lot of issues with it, but I didn't dislike it, so it was average. For my challenges, also for my Triple RC challenge, this was for challenge number 8, which was Take a Hike Day, which was to read a book with trees on the cover, so this one absolutely fits the bill. And again, special thanks to NetGalley and the publisher Harlequin for sending me an e-art copy of this one to review as well. So this is the story of, what are our characters' names? Jillian and Hawk. And this is one of those stories. Now, I know with a lot of fiction, a lot of times you got to suspend your disbelief. Like, okay, would that actually happen in real life? And you just kind of go with it and enjoy the story. You know what I mean? But this one, they're asking you to suspend a lot of disbelief, in my opinion. So, like I said, Jillian and Hawk. Now, his name is actually Jason, I think, if I remember correctly. They didn't give him, he didn't go by his actual name a lot, but at the very beginning of the story opens up with a lot of action, which is always really enjoyable. That there's these men trying to break into Jillian's house, and Hawk lives right next door. So he kind of stops them, and he takes Jillian and her young daughter, you know, carries them away to safety, essentially. And they have barely ever spoken. They've been neighbors for about 6 months, but they never speak to each other. They wave to each other, and they know of each other. He knows a lot more about her than she knows about him, which you begin to find out as the book progresses. So what happened was, the backstory, and it's not giving away too much because you find all this out right at the beginning of the book, is that Hawk is actually Jillian's husband. 3 or 4 years earlier, he was serving in Afghanistan, and he came back over, so he's a soldier, former soldier. She was led to believe that he died in Afghanistan, and, you know, that's kind of all there was. They have this young daughter. She was only just pregnant when he went over to serve, or he didn't even know she was pregnant. I can't remember. But anyway, the baby wasn't there just yet. Like, the baby hadn't been born yet. So he had come back stateside and was traveling with some of his group, like, that he went over and served with. And then he was in a plane crash. And I think he was the sole survivor. He had amnesia for like over a year. So he took the name Hawk because when he woke up from being like in this plane crash and he was in the forest, there was all these hawks. So he just kind of took that name. He has since remembered who he is and that he is her husband, but he's very, very scarred on his face. Now, I'm sorry, from the cover, you can't tell that at all. And which was a little bit of I had some contention with that, a bone of contention with that, but c'est la vie. And so Jillian doesn't recognize him. They live next door to each other for like 5 or 6 months, and she does not recognize him. Now, if he looked like that with no scarring or anything, I'm sorry, but how could you not recognize your husband? The man that it's not like it was some random guy in a bar that you had a one night stand with and got pregnant. You married this person. Granted, you didn't see each other a lot because, he was on tour of duty and stuff like that. But still, you'd remember what your husband looks like. I'm sorry. So that was a big sticking point with me, is the fact that she did not recognize him. But then once she found out who he was, I have to give credit, she was still very wary because he's been gone for years. He's not the same person. He doesn't go by the same name anymore, He's very much a different personality from who her husband was. And, he went through a very drastic change after this accident and having amnesia and what have you. So I think my biggest sticking point and why this one didn't get like a 3.5 star, because like I said, there was a lot of action. It was really interesting, trying to find out what's going on, why she's being targeted, why he's being targeted, what happened with the plane crash, all these other things. But the fact that, and I still kept coming back to it, that she did not know who he was, for like 6 months. And, and again, it's not even like it was just some random guy in town who lived like, 20 minutes away and she only saw him once or twice, and he looks a little bit different, but he lived next door. Stalker much? Like, why he didn't just come over and tell, I'm sorry you've been lied to. I'm sorry you've been duped. I just realized you are who you are and this is what I remember and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, kind of a lot going on. And I really had a hard time, like I said, suspending my disbelief, especially considering if you look at the cover, he does not look that scarred. But if he is that scarred and that different, then, that would have been interesting to be at least shown on the cover of the book, like, so you know what you're getting into. But I don't know. Anyway, I didn't dislike it. These ones are quite good. I do enjoy the Love Inspired Suspense quite a bit. But, this one just fell a little bit flat for me. Next one that I finished was probably my favorite book of the month, or of the week, excuse me, favorite book of the week. And that was Lake Season by Denise Hunter. This was a contemporary romance, another faith-based or Christian-based contemporary. Although this one wasn't as preachy, for use of a better word, than the Love Inspired books. They tend to really focus on, scripture and God and things like that. Whereas this one, it was interwoven into the story, but it wasn't as in your face. Let's put it that way. This was narrated on audio by Nan Kelly. Book number 1 in the Bluebell Inn romance series, which I absolutely plan on reading the rest of them once they're published. This one was published in 2019. It did come out just this November. Average rating on Goodreads of 4.56 stars, guys. I gave this one 4 stars. This one I also read for Romanceopoly for the library challenge, which was just to read any book at all, whatever book you want. And again, special thanks to NetGalley and the publisher Thomas Nielsen for sending me an e-arc of this one to review. I did get the e-arc, but of course, as you already heard, I listened to it on audio, and I really enjoyed the audio narration on this one, you guys. So this was the story of Molly and Adam, and this story was adorable. So it starts off very, very sad, where Molly's parents are killed in a car accident. She is the middle sibling. She has an older brother named Levi and a younger sister named, is it Grace? I'm sorry, I can't remember the younger sister. I think it might be Grace. Anyway, the younger sister is like in her sophomore or junior year of high school. I can't remember which comes first. The one right before you're a senior. And so Molly had been going to school, and Levi, had been working full time. And anyway, her parents had this home, and it was a former inn. And her parents' plan had been that once her dad retired, that they were going to turn it back into an inn. So it was kind of already under construction. So when the parents died, the sister begged. She wanted to stay in the house. And it takes place, I believe, in the Carolinas. And she wanted to stay in the house, so the siblings, Molly and the older brother, decided to kind of stop whatever they were doing. Molly quit school and the brother quit his job, and they decided to use what they got from insurance money from the parents to fix this place up into an inn. So the story starts 1 year after that, and that's the prologue. And then the story starts a year after that, and Adam shows up, and he is looking for a place to stay for the summer. He is a writer. He is a very, very well-known writer. He sounded very similar to a Nicholas Sparks, the kind of stories that he writes, but he writes under a pseudonym. But he is actually Molly's favorite writer, but she has no idea who he is because he's a recluse writer. He doesn't do interviews. He doesn't have his pictures on his book jackets. You don't ever hear anything about him. So anyway, as the story progresses, the two of them kind of fall into this cute little relationship. Of course, because it's faith-based, you're not getting any adult content in this, which is great. And it's a really sweet romance. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. But along with the romance between Molly and Adam, you're also dealing with this mystery, which is what I think upped this book, like pushed it up a notch to me. Because at the beginning of the book, Molly ends up finding this letter from the 1960s, written by this woman named Elizabeth to her sweetheart. And her and this guy named Ben, Elizabeth and Ben from the 1960s, they had this relationship over the summer, and at the end of the summer, they were going to run off together. Not run off together, but they were going to eventually get married, essentially. And her father had major issues with Ben because he is Jewish, or was Jewish. Like, he's from a Jewish family, but he practices Christianity, I guess, but they're Catholic. Like, Elizabeth's family is Catholic. So anyway, Ben believes it's because he doesn't have a very good job and can't take care of her and blah, 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 when in reality, it's more of a religious prejudice that the father has against this boy. So they find this letter. So the story at certain parts, it doesn't spend the whole time going back and forth, but every few chapters you get a perspective from Elizabeth and Ben back in the 1960s, which was a lot of fun. And you do get this kind of mystery about what happened to them and why it happened. And then there's something else that I'm not going to share with you guys because it was kind of a big reveal later on in the book, but it was really good. If you like, the Notebook is mentioned in this a lot, which is why I kept thinking of Adam like a Nicholas Sparks type of author. And when I say type of author, I know a lot of people have issues with Nicholas Sparks as a person. So I'm not mentioning him as a person. I'm saying the type of books that he writes. But they kept mentioning the Notebook because they say Adam looks like Noah, Ryan Gosling's character from the Notebook. Yeah, not too shabby. I remember back in the day watching him in, oh my God, what was that show? It was the one where they were all on the cruise ship going to high school. If I remember the name of it, I'll put it down here. Anybody else watch that one too? He's Canadian, by the way, FYI. I think he's Canadian, right? Yeah, I think so. I think we can claim him as a native son. Anyway, I'm getting away from the point of the story here. So, yeah, it was really, really enjoyable. And like I said, I really think that whole mystery aspect of these other people who, you're dealing with in the 1960s and the prejudices and stuff like that, even not that long ago, because the 1960s was not that long ago. Totally interesting. I really, really enjoyed it. It was a fun aspect. I do love a good dual timeline narration. Now, like I said, this one doesn't absolutely go back and forth every other chapter, but you get about a half a dozen scenes or chapters that take place between Elizabeth and Ben, and I really, really enjoyed it. So the next one that I the next one that I read was my DNF, and I want to talk about it real quick. I did write it down here so I wouldn't forget. And that was Stealing Her by Rachel Van Dyken. I DNF'd this book at 27%. I was listening to or reading it on print book or on ebook. This was a NetGalley read from the publisher, so I always find it harder to DNF books that were sent to me for review, but I just feel that what I like about NetGalley is that you can actually go on there and say you're not going to leave a review. And you can just say the reason why. They give you a list of different reasons, like there was a problem with formatting, I didn't like this, or, I didn't like the story. And then they do give you an area where you can type up something. And I did do that for this book. This book, talking about suspending your disbelief. It's about two brothers, twin brothers. And at the beginning of the book, in the prologue, the two of them are separated when their parents divorced. The father takes the brother, and the mother takes our main character, Bridge. The brother's name was Julian. And they are raised completely separately. They came from a very, very wealthy family before the parents divorced. The father had all the money. The mother was a socialite. She was left with nothing because she signed a prenup. And so her and Bridge are kind of living hand to mouth, essentially. Whereas the father and the other boy, the brother, are living like the most opulent lifestyle. So already you're kind of like, really? That would really happen? But, I guess stranger things, right? Stranger things have happened. And so then, at the beginning of the book, like when the story actually starts, the brother is in a horrific car accident. Julian is in a horrific car accident, and it's whether he will live or die. And he is now running the company that the father owns, or he's one of the people on the board of directors or what have you. So because him and Julian, or Bridge and Julian, are identical twins, the father finally comes to see his other son and is like, hey, I need your help. And in order to get him to help him, the mother is dying, slowly dying of this very unknown, like an unknown disease, something about she can't process or she can't break down food, so she's slowly starving to death. Like they've got a feeding tube, so she's getting nutrients, but it's still not enough to sustain her over a long period of time. But they, of course, because I always have to think, in the US it's different than Canada. You know, in the US you've got to pay for all of these medical treatments if you don't have insurance. So you know, he wants to try all these treatments to try and make his mother better, but they cost money. Now in Canada, if it was an experimental treatment, that's different too. I don't want to get into, you know, the universal healthcare system, but in general, if someone is very, very sick, we have the universal healthcare system to help take care of people. So, you know, up here, that story wouldn't work as well, I don't think. So anyway, the father offers to pay for all the mother's medical expenses if the son agrees to help him. So at first I thought, okay, I can get into this. So the brother Julian actually has a fiance that she broke up with him right before the car accident, but he's just he gave her back the engagement ring and he's like, we will talk about this later. I have a meeting to get to, kind of an idea. They did not have a very good relationship at all. He cheats on her constantly, and yet she will not leave him. And that was my second big point of why I DNF'd this. So the first point was that, of course, they had to make it look like Bridge was in a car accident. So the father takes him to this less reputable area of town and has these hired goons essentially beat the living snot out of him to make it look like, really? That's a thing? People would do that? I kind of went, really? Really? No. How about you just have him go away for a few months and then come back to, you know, whatever, and say, hey, look, I'm healed, you know, but no. So then the second thing that really set me off and I just couldn't continue was our main character. I didn't even write down her name. Isabel, something like that. So her parents died when she was younger, very sad. And she was kind of raised, or she was a bit older, like she was in her teens. And she was brought in to live with Julian and his father because she was good friends with Julian. And the father kind of gave her everything. He bought her a car. He sent her to university. He made sure she was taken care of in a very opulent lifestyle. And so, as I mentioned, Julian cheats on her every chance he gets. In one part of the book, before it starts, before the accident, she comes home one night to find their maid in their bed, naked except for a pair of high heels. You know, obviously it's not for her, it's for Julian. So she was expecting Julian to come home first. So clearly, and he didn't try and hide this behavior. He wants her to dress a certain way and act a certain way. And I'm thinking, honey, I would have been gone long ago. Like, the two of them dated all throughout college, and it was different because once he started taking over the company and once he got on the board of directors, his whole attitude changed. That if she was going to marry him, she had to be a certain type of wife. Wear the right things, do the right things. Should you really have dessert? You're going to put on some weight, blah, 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 those kind of things. And I would have left him long ago. But she didn't leave him, and this infuriated me, was because she had nothing. He owned the car that she drove. He had all the money in the bank. She would have been left with nothing. But, excuse me, sorry guys. But she has a degree as a nurse. She went to university and got a degree to be a nurse. Go out and get a job. You know, you don't have to just walk out the door and leave him. You can slowly start building it up. You know what I mean? If you're willing to stay with him that long, even after all the cheating and the way he emotionally abuses you, then you can take the time to go behind his back and get a job. She volunteers at a hospital. They would hire her on no problem. You know, that just, I couldn't get past it. And I think it was about the fourth time that I read it in the book saying, oh, I've got nothing. He's got everything. I can't leave him. I was like, I'm done. I can't deal with you. I'm sorry. You know, I know that there are certain situations with abuse that it's very difficult for the woman to leave. I get that. I understand that. But to use money as the reason, and the fact that, you know, you wouldn't have that Louis Vuitton purse now, and that's what it was. That's how I read into it. It wasn't just that she would have nothing. I guarantee she had friends she could stay with. You know what I mean? There were options. But the fact that she would have had to give up her Mercedes or her Bentley or whatever car it was that she drove, or her Rolex watch, or her Louis Vuitton purse, or her, you know, whatever pumps, I was done. And I'm sorry. I know I went off quite a while on a book I DNF'd. but that's the reason why I'm sorry. No, there was just too much in this book that I didn't like. And I was one of the few people who didn't like this book. This book has huge high ratings on Goodreads. People love it. Was not for me. And the last book that I finished this week, sorry, a bit longer than normal video, you guys, I just looked at the time, was Killer Exposure by Jessica R. Patch. This was another inspirational romantic suspense. Book number 751 in the Love Inspired Suspense series. Published in 2019. Average rating on Goodreads of 4.66 stars. I gave this one 3.5 stars. For my challenges, this was part of my 40 Years of Harlequin project. Yay! So this one I think was February or March. I can't remember what month it was. Where's that other book gone that I'm currently reading? Excuse me. Oh, I was way off. It's May. It was May's book. This one is the story of Greer and Locke. So the two of them were in a relationship prior to the book starting, and the one thing that I'm noticing a lot more now with the inspirational books are that you're getting a lot of adult hanky-panky prior to marriage, which I know for a lot of people of faith is a big no-no, right? Now, it's not happening in the book. They're kind of getting around it by having it happen before the story starts. But I am noticing it more and more. You know, when I go through my my Harlequin anticipated reads and I'm reading the back of these books, it's always like, not that they were married, but that, you know, he has a child that he didn't know about with this woman or what have you. And I'm thinking, you know, like, and I know Elizabeth talked about this once in one of her videos, saying that that wasn't something, as somebody who is very, you know, holds her faith very dearly, that she doesn't agree with, essentially, you know, and I'm not here to debate the merits of hanky-panky before marriage, because that's not what we're here to do. But I'm just saying, for faith-based books, I'm noticing it more and more, and I'm just putting it out there as an observation. So depending on how you feel about these type of books, you know, you may or may not want to steer clear of this one. Now, nothing happens in the book. It happens before the book starts. So the two of them are in a relationship. She gets pregnant. And he is actually a storm chaser. He is, and they actually make reference in the book to the movie Twister, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't know what it is about that movie, but I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's a classic in my opinion. But anyway, so they kind of make reference to that, and that's what he does, is he's a storm chaser. And I think when they make reference to it, he's kind of like, well, you know, the scene at the end where him and Helen Hunt are like tied up in that like leather thing, he's like, yeah, that wouldn't have happened. And I think anyone who's ever watched the movie kind of knows that that's not legit. But anyway, so she didn't tell him about the pregnancy because he said he never wanted children, but he wanted to get married, but he just didn't want kids because he wanted to be a storm chaser. Kind of hard to do when you're saddled down with kids, right? So anyway, she kind of comes home and she ends up looking after her mother, who ends up passing away, and she has the baby. And then he shows up back in town and finds out about the baby. Well, of course, this is a romantic suspense novel, so there is a murder that has taken place as well. Greer is a sheriff's deputy, and she is also the photographer, like the crime scene photographer for the county. So she's kind of first on scene to kind of take photographs of this dead person, or the person who was murdered, and then the killer starts coming after her, and the story goes from there. Really enjoyable. I liked it quite a bit. Again, you know, each to their own on how you're going to take the whole hanky-panky before marriage thing. That happens before the book starts. I liked both of the characters, though. There was just something about this that didn't absolutely wow me, but still, 3.5 stars is more than an average rating for me, which I've said before. So, I mean, it was absolutely enjoyable. If you like these romantic suspense novels, this one was great. It is a standalone, so it's not like you have to read a whole bunch of books in the series. Jessica R. Patch, I've seen a lot of books by her, so I am definitely going to be checking out more of her work because it was a highly enjoyable read. And again, I love the aspect of it referencing Twister and how he is a storm chaser, and I just really like that aspect of it. And yeah, really, really enjoyable. So anyway, guys, that is all that I read this week. And let me know in the comments below, sorry, if you have read any of these books, or what was your favorite book that you read this week, because I'd love to know that too. And until my next video, everybody, take care and happy reading. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye, guys.